Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to have some questions from the media now. And the first one I have on my list is Keith from GB News. Keith.
Mr. Jenrick, can you explain to GB News viewers how you plan to support Britain's lost generation? We've seen headlines saying that people are out of work, they're struggling. If you become Chancellor, what will you do to give young people hope in this country?
A very good question. Look, it's a very sad situation in the country right now. When I was leaving school, it felt like there was a sense of excitement and buzz still in this country. But when I go around talking to young people, they worry about their future, where they're going to get a job, where they can get on the housing ladder. If they do get a job, they'll be taxed to the hilt, the cost of childcare. It feels like the social contract has been shredded in recent years. Those who went to university during COVID had the best days of their life wrecked due to overbearing regulations. Reform is going to change that. We want to get good jobs back into this economy. And that means ensuring that we don't tax employers to the hilt, as Rachel Reeves has done with her job-destroying increases in national insurance. It means that we are going to ensure that we make the changes in our economy, as I set out today, to house building, to energy, to regulation, to actually spur a new generation of businesses and entrepreneurs, including young people, to create the jobs, the prosperity, the growth that is needed so that they can feel that this country has a great future. They don't need to go off and live somewhere else in the world. Quite the opposite. What we're going to set out to do is to bring all those people back to the UK. That if there's a reform government, people think that this is a country that is getting itself together again, that's heading in the right direction, where there is a sense of buzz and energy and excitement and dynamism. That's our mission. And at the heart of that is going to be young people and their prospects to get a good job and to get on the housing ladder. Thank you. I've got Katie Austin from the BBC.
Thank you. Thanks. Carrying on with young people, should younger workers be paid the same minimum wage as older workers? And as we're in the city, do you still think the Bank of England should stop paying interest on commercial bank deposits created by QE? Thanks.
Well, on the second point, I think there's a very legitimate issue there, which Nigel set out in remarks that he made at Davos, and we're going to be giving that careful thought. What you've seen in the speech that I've made today, everything that we do in the months and the years ahead is going to be the result of careful, strategic consideration, talking with market participants and coming forward with serious, robust policies. And we want to ensure that the City of London thrives again. You know, I had my first job in the city, Nigel did, at the heart of reform, and a number of people like Zia and Richard who have built highly successful businesses. We want to see this be the world's greatest financial centre, and it pains us to see what's happened in recent years, to see the London Stock Exchange on its knees, to see good jobs lost, not just to the United States, but actually losing out in a way we could never have imagined to competitors in Europe. Who would have thought there would be a more competitive tax regime in Greece or Portugal than there is in the UK today? That entrepreneurs will be going to live in Milan because they think that Italy is more stable than the UK. We're going to change that. As regards to young people, I think Nigel was one of the first to say when Rachel Reeves proposed increasing the minimum wage for younger workers that that was concerning because youth unemployment was a serious problem. You know, there's 250,000 jobs for young people have been lost since Labour came to power. For the first time this century, youth unemployment is now worse in the UK than in the EU. We all used to say that one of the good things in the UK was our youth unemployment versus those of European economies because of the structural reforms that had been done by prior generations. But that appears to have been reversed now, undermined by this Labour government. So we're going to think very carefully about how we can support more young people onto the housing, into the workplace. And yes, what they are paid is important in that equation because we all remember our first jobs. And you only have to go around the country today and talk to people, particularly in hospitality, who are struggling enough as it is and are asking, can we afford to take on somebody to work in a pub or a cafe or a restaurant who is a younger worker Or should we perhaps choose somebody who's slightly older, a 25-year-old who's got more experience of the workplace? These are economically harmful decisions that were not thought through by Rachel Reeves, and I'm going to be holding her to account for them. Now, we've got Alex Rogers from Sky News next. Alex.
If you go ahead and scrap the Equality Act, do you intend to replace it with your own legislation that still enshrines some of its protections? And can you guarantee that no one will lose their job because of their sex, ethnicity or disability under your plans? Thank you.
Yeah, so Suella Braverman will be setting out more details on this in the coming days. But let's be very clear. Over generations, a succession of important pieces of legislation were passed in this country to protect workplace rights, whether that was the Equal Pay Act or the Disability Discrimination Act. And we want to see those rights protected and handed on to future generations. What undoubtedly has been harmful to the way government works, to the way our economy operates, and to our society are the reforms that were taken forward by Harriet Harman in the final weeks of the Brown government when it was on its knees and on its way out, creating the public sector equality duty, for example. Things that have led to perverse outcomes, like the Bank of England creating an internship scheme which white working class boys are not able to apply for. Well, I represent a working class town in North Nottinghamshire, and imagine me going to schools there and seeing kids who've been brought up in tough circumstances on a council estate in a former pit village and saying to them, oh, you can't apply to GCHQ or to the Bank of England or to an investment bank for their internship scheme because you're privileged, or because there's a piece of legislation that allows that to continue. That's not sensible. That's not common sense. And we want to change that and ensure equality before the law is the guiding principle in this country once again. Now, I've got Sam Merriman from the Daily Mail. Sam.
Thank you. Mr. Jenrick, one economic policy that you didn't mention, and I'm sure will be very important to many of your voters, is the triple lock. Will Reform commit to maintaining the triple lock into the next election? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we're going to be saying more about this in the coming days, but I've always been a supporter of the triple lock. It's incredibly important that we provide dignity and security to older people on fixed incomes in the last decades of their life, particularly in a time like this where there's such challenging circumstances with the cost of living. So I don't think your readers will be disappointed, but we'll say more in the coming weeks. And we've got Lucy White now from Bloomberg.
Thank you. You have spoken a lot about the policies that are being proposed by your colleagues Richard Tice, Zia Youssef, Danny Kruger. But the policies that you've talked about today that have come from you are a lot along the lines of sort of fiscal orthodoxy that Reform has always claimed to eschew. Do you have any ideas of your own that you might be thinking about soon that will sort of shake up the city in any way? And if I can ask as well, on fiscal rules, do you have any yet? Do you have any idea what your fiscal rules might be?
Well, on the second point, we're not going to make up fiscal rules on the first day in my role as Shadow Chancellor. That would be the opposite of the approach that we're taking. As I hope you can see from what I've said this morning, we're going to be deliberative. We're going to be careful. Successive governments in my adult lifetime have made fiscal rules, they've changed them, and they've broken them. All the while, the public finances have ended up where they are today, in a mess. So we're going to talk to market participants, and we're going to develop strict, world-class fiscal rules ahead of the next general election. As regards to the policies I've set out today, well, look, I think these are radical policies. And if you don't see that, I'm surprised. We're saying that the economic and political consensus that this country has had, probably since 1992, is about to change because it's failed comprehensively and it's let down the British people. It's been an economic consensus predicated on mass migration. Well, that's going to go. and we're going to ensure that we are the grammar school of the Western world, where we only invite in the best and the brightest who are genuinely economic contributors to this country. And as a result of that, businesses will have to invest in the productivity of their own workers, technology, better skills, robotics, the things that will drive the economy forwards. We're saying that net zero was a disastrous mistake, peddled by governments of both political colours, put on acid by Theresa May and Boris Johnson, and that is gone. And instead we're going to go for cheap and reliable energy to actually make this country competitive again in the world. We're saying we're going to bring forward serious welfare reforms, not the ones that were written on the back of a fag packet by the Conservative Party in opposition a few months ago, but detailed ones. And we're prepared to take on difficult things, to think again sometimes, like I said today, where we've chosen to say we'll bring back the two-child benefit cap in full. Not that our previous policy wasn't well meant. Of course we want to help British workers to have families. But we're also aware that we've got to live within our means, and we've got to find ways other than welfare to help to support them to fulfill their dreams. And we're going to pursue serious deregulation in all sectors, from small businesses right the way up to the city. And we're going to be spending the weeks and the months ahead developing those policies. But you can be assured this is going to be a big change. And the balance we're going to strike is exactly what I set out at the end of my remarks. We're going to be conservative when it comes to preserving what's important, like fiscal responsibility and stability in the economy. We're not going to do the mistakes that Liz Truss and Rachel Reeves have done. But we are going to be radical where we need to be, to shake up this economy, shake it out of its malaise, and get it going again. That's the balance we'll strike. It's the right one for this country right now. Now, I've got Alistair Lyon from City AM.
Hi there.
Alistair.
Hi. Nigel Farage yesterday spoke about backing national champions, sort of taking stakes in British companies, and I actually interviewed Zia Youssef, who floated taking a 10% stake in Rolls-Royce. Are there any other companies that you've sort of got your eye on? And how do you reconcile that with your promise just now not to pick winners and to leave businesses alone?
Well, I think I was very clear in my remarks about what our approach is in this regard. We don't believe in picking winners. What we do believe in is that there is, in the world today, an interplay between security and economics, which only the most naive would choose to ignore. And it surprises me that some are doing so, particularly in the Conservative Party, if you listen to the remarks in recent days. Those industries, like steel, like car making, like defence, we've got to ensure we salvage them and that we preserve strategically important industries. And we also won't be taken for a ride in the world. So if countries, particularly China, want to cheat the system, dump goods on our markets, then we'll respond accordingly. But we're going to take a wide-eyed approach that protects British jobs and ensures that we can reindustrialise in the sectors, the very specific sectors, that are critical to the future of our national security, principally, and our economy. I'll go to Martina Bett from The Sun. Martina.
Thank you, Mr. Jenrick. The Chancellor recently said that the student loan system is fair and reasonable. Do you agree? And if you don't agree, what will the reform government do to ease the burden for graduates? And just quickly, on the triple lock, based on what you've just said, it does seem like you do not agree with Nigel Farage that its future is up for debate. Could you clarify, please? Thank you.
Well, I think I was very clear on the triple lock that we're going to be saying more in time on that, but we're always going to protect pensioners. We're always going to protect pensioners because we want them to live in dignity and security. And we appreciate how life has been tough for them as a result of the bad policies of both the last Conservative government and this one. Energy prices, for example, does put immense strain on their budgets. With respect to students and student loans, look, the system is a mess. The rates of interest have been usurious recently, and the system has been set up to fail. I mean, you've actually got foreign citizens claiming student loans right now, costing the British taxpayer hundreds of millions, potentially billions of pounds, rather than that money going on skills training for our own people. We're always going to put the interests of the British public first. And we also want to ensure that our universities actually focus on what matters. Yes, some should and must be world-class institutions, and we take great pride in that. That is critical to the future of our economy. But we also want to see many of our universities get out of the market of Mickey Mouse degrees and focus on skills training for British people, particularly helping their own economy, the regional economies, to be in a stronger footing than they are today, and supporting apprentices and good quality vocational and technical degrees, exactly as Suella said in her remarks yesterday, and we'll be saying more of, I think, in the future. Very good. We've got Peter from The Telegraph.
Thank you. Two questions, if I can. Really quickly, you mentioned some sort of competition to join the OBR if you'd be a super forecaster. Can you give us a little bit more detail around what that might look like? And just one more. Last month, your leader, Nigel Farage, said the OBR is a Blairite-style quango, effectively dictating to elected politicians what they should or should not do. Was he wrong?
Well, on the point about who's staffed at the OBR, look, the OBR can't be a retirement home for people who worked at the Resolution Foundation. It's got to be for genuinely talented people who are able to produce world-class financial models. As the Times reported recently, I think the OBR was ranked second from bottom of all the forecasts in recent times. So only a fool would say that things have gone swimmingly at the OBR recently. We're going to change that. It means bring in people who have the skills that are necessary. And yet it does mean some competition to ensure that we actually get the right models, so they're providing the right advice to the Chancellor of the day. And the budget process works well. We saw, I think without question, the worst budget process, I'd say in living memory, possibly ever, with Rachel Reeves' budget, where she went month after month, floating new tax rises, getting supposedly new forecasts, frankly lying about what the forecasts were when she went on the media to scare people. That's got to come to an end. So we're going to work with the OBR to reform it and make sure it's fit for purpose. But the broader point I was making is this. What was the reason for the OBR being created? Well, maybe there was some politics in it from George Osborne. Shock. But it was also because under Labour, under Gordon Brown, people had lost faith in some of the Treasury's own numbers, and there was a need to instill fiscal rectitude. And we believe in that. We're not scared of that. We want to ensure that we have fiscal stability, we have financial responsibility, and we believe in sound money. So we're going to work with the OBR, make it a better version of itself, and ensure that we have sound money at the heart of government policy going forwards. Daisy, please, from The Times.
Thank you. Just firstly, specifically following on student loans, would you commit to reversing the government's decision to freeze the repayment threshold for 4 years, which effectively levied a £1 billion tax on graduates in the last budget? And secondly, you said in your speech that the Conservatives had delivered some commendable reforms to our welfare system. Could you set out what those commendable policies were, and will you rule out a return to the austerity policies of the Cameron government if you become Reform's Chancellor?
Well, I think I've said what I need to say on students. I'm not going to make up policy here. It's very clear the approach that Reform is going to take. We're going to have a deliberate attitude towards policy. Things we say will be well thought through and fully costed, and nobody's going to be standing at podiums like this making stuff up on the hoof. With regard to... sorry, what was the second half of your question? Welfare reform. Sorry, apologies. Look, we're fair-minded in Reform. We will praise things that were good, and we will oppose things that have been bad. The very early days of the last Conservative, in fact coalition government, under Ian Duncan Smith, there were good reforms brought forward, which set out to make work pay. And as a result of that, the economy improved. There were more disabled people, for example, who were helped out of welfare and back into the workplace. Youth unemployment came down and remained relatively low compared to our competitors. And overall, employment levels were good in the country. And so let's be honest about that. And one of the reasons why that happened, incidentally, was that in opposition, careful thought and planning was taken to prepare those reforms. However, after COVID, it's been a complete mess. The benefits bill has ballooned. The last Conservative government clearly took far too long to respond to that. And as a result of that, millions of people are out of work, claiming benefits. The benefits bill is going to bankrupt this country, and we've got to ensure that we fix that because we're not prepared to leave people in that situation, and taxpayers know it's unfair. I've got, next, we've got Jonathan Walker from The Express.
Thank you. I think it's clear from what you've said that you feel that the quantitative easing of the past was a bad idea. But what can the Bank of England really do today to control inflation more, apart from keeping interest rates high, which means presumably higher mortgages? And also, can I ask you, it is striking that at this point you don't seem able to say that the party, quite able to say that the party is committed to the triple lock. Is it fair to say this is something that you've been taking a good hard look at?
No, it's something we're going to be talking about in the coming days. But look, I think I've been very clear on that, you know, your readers will not be disappointed by our view on that. We want to protect pensioners and those who rely on it. As regards to the Bank of England, I was very clear that the blame doesn't solely fit with the Bank of England. The furlough scheme pumped hundreds of billions of pounds into the economy and created massive inflation as a result. You've seen that with quantitative easing, both after the financial crash and during and after COVID as well. There is a role for government and the Chancellor, who has to ultimately take responsibility to be very careful with inflation, whether that's in those regards or with respect to public sector pay. And the message that I hope we've landed today is that reform takes inflation extremely seriously. We've got now Alistair from Reuters.
Hi, thank you. You mentioned that you wanted fiscal headroom before you had any tax cuts. If you achieved that fiscal headroom, what would be the first tax cuts that you would prioritise? And just on the fiscal rules...
Well, just to be clear, I mean, if I haven't been already, we're not going to make tax and spend promises right now. So sorry to disappoint you on that front, but we're going to take these decisions in time very carefully.
Sure. And on the fiscal rules, would you be open to keeping the current fiscal rules if the feedback you get is that they work well, or even making them less restrictive? Or are you pretty sure that you want tighter fiscal rules and it's just about how it works?
I think we're going to have to take our time and work through this. It's only the second day in my position, but I've been clear. We're going to have strict fiscal rules, and the point is we're going to actually talk to market participants in the weeks and months to come. We're going to tour them, listen to their views, and develop them ahead of the next general election. William from the Press Association.
Hello. Hi. We've been talking about inflation today quite a lot, and we're inching towards that 2% target. Andrew, how would you rate Andrew Bailey's performance at the bank, and would you keep that target in place if you were to join the Treasury?
Well, I've been very clear. Of course, we're going to keep the target in place, and it's incredibly important to us. You know, reform serves working people, and we want to make sure we keep their bills down. At the moment, people are suffering because bills are far too high, and so that's going to be a major priority of our economic policy to find any ways, whether it's energy bills, water bills, you name it, to try and get those bills to come down. I've got Aggie from LBC.
Very much. Robert Jenrick, can I just clarify your position on the minimum wage for younger workers? Because it sounds like, and indeed Richard Tice told us this on Monday night, that you are looking at cutting minimum wage for younger workers. If that's right, how much by? And also,
we're not. If I can stop you, we're not proposing to cut the minimum wage. The minimum wage will be set by Rachel Reeves and the government, long in advance of the next general election. So there's no suggestion of that. But I think there's a very legitimate concern about young people in the workplace right now. And we've got to ensure that we set policy accordingly. And we are concerned that increases that are being proposed are going to make it much more difficult for employers, particularly in some of those sectors that are under strain, like hospitality, to take young people on. We're not going to cut the minimum wage, if that's your question.
Okay, so the minimum wage is going to remain the same. If the government raises it in government, if reform were there, you would keep it the same as what the government had raised it to.
We're not going to cut the minimum wage once it's been set, but it is right to raise concerns. I think, from what we've heard today, Rachel Reeves has recognised herself.
Great. And second question, you've nearly been in Reform UK, you've just been there over a month. What's the thing that surprised you the most in your new party? The
incredible energy, enthusiasm, momentum that there is. There's no other party like this in British politics, I can assure you. Right, we've got Emilio from Politico.
Hi, Robert. I've got two questions, if that's okay. You talked about the chaos that Liz Truss unleashed. So why didn't you resign from her front bench while she was doing it instead?
Well, I did resign from one Conservative government. I can't resign all the time.
Well, you could. If you really disagreed with the economic policies, why did you sit quietly there?
Well, I did, if I can say that, I didn't sit quietly, as it so happens, as I think I think it's the book that Jeremy Hunt wrote will record, that I phoned him up the weekend he became the Chancellor, told him exactly what I thought were the problems with the mini-budget and told him to reverse all of it. And he records that me and one other Conservative did that. So I made my views pretty clear at the time. And if I may say so, when I was standing to be leader of the Conservative Party, I was the only person who said that I thought that mini-budget was careless and cack-handed. And I've also pretty clearly said that I'm surprised that Liz Truss is still a member of the Conservative Party, but that's not my problem now, as they say.
Well, thank you for that. And I want to ask you about your new head of policy, James Orr, who last August he said that the Russian invasion of Ukraine is a regional Slavic conflict that he didn't care very much about, and he said that the UK approach of defending Ukraine is dangerous and championed the Hungarian approach, which is basically blocking support to Ukraine. Do you agree with that, and is this the man who should be devising foreign policy for reform?
Look, firstly, Reform's position is very clear. Reform stands with Ukraine and against oppressors like Vladimir Putin. There's no doubt about that. James is a very talented man who I've known for a long time. We worked together many years ago. He's one of the most intelligent, thoughtful people, fantastic understanding of policy, understanding of geopolitics. He's a great asset to the party. I'll go to Tim Stanley now from the Daily Telegraph.
Thank you. Good morning. Rob, when you were a Conservative MP, you said that Nigel must have, quote, had one too many pints before pledging to abolish the two-child cap.
No, I can't believe that's the case.
Well, you've clearly won the battle on this policy. So does this U-turn, plus keeping the OBR and keeping bank independence, represent the end of populism in reform and the Toryfication of the party? And on the policy itself, you say you want to be the party of alarm clock Britain, but as you know, working families also benefit from lifting the benefit cap, which is predicted to draw hundreds of thousands of people out of relative poverty. Suella Braverman, when she was a Conservative MP, described the cap as unfair and said it had pushed people into poverty. So can you today persuade Suella Braverman that she's wrong?
Well, let me be clear about this. The policy that the party adopted was well-meaning and was focusing support upon British workers and their kids. And look, we all want to see those people be able to have families and lead good lives. The issue is that our economy is in a mess, mainly as a result of disastrous decisions that have been taken, including latterly by Rachel Reeves. So we've got to live in the world as it is. Unfortunately, we can't afford to do this right now through welfare. There will be other ways in which we can help support and encourage families to prosper in the years ahead. But it's not going to be through welfare. That's why we've made this decision. It's a tough one, but it's an important one. And it shows our intent that Reform is not a party of welfare. We're going to be bringing forward serious reforms in the months ahead to bring down that welfare bill, help people back into the workplace, and ensure fairness for working people once again. I'll go to Will Hazel. We're working through these. There's a few left, so we have to be a bit faster now. Will Hazel from The Eye.
Thank you very much. Robert, you mentioned labour rights as an area where Britain could gain a competitive edge, I think you said. do you have any particular rights in mind which you think we should get rid of? And if I may, Nigel Farage is a very dominant figure in the Reform Party. Are you confident you will have the latitude you need to determine policy? And sometimes a Chancellor has to say no to their Prime Minister. Are you prepared to say no to Nigel?
Well, I've only worked with Nigel for a few weeks, but it's been extremely positive. I found him to be immensely hardworking, which I respect. Somebody with incredible knowledge and understanding of politics and the economy. Some real-world experience, who worked here in the city and is, rather different record to some of our chancellors and prime ministers. And somebody who is good at working with people, and that's exactly what we want to do. We want to have a good working relationship. Nigel is the leader of the party, so it's not surprising that at the end of the day, he's the person who makes the final decisions. And what a relief it is to be in a party with a strong leader who everyone respects. I think that would be a good thing generally for other political parties. I'll go to Max from Guido. Oh, sorry, on Labour Pos. We could be. There are a number of examples. We'll be setting out more in the weeks and months to come. Richard, in particular, because he is the spokesperson on this, so I'll really leave it for him to speak to. But it's quite clear that much within the employment rights bill that's gone through Parliament has been immensely harmful to business, to confidence. It's contributed to the unemployment that we're seeing right now in the country, and we'll have to consider what within that bill we want to scrap to create a better environment for businesses. I've got Max now from Guido.
Hi, Robert. We're less than 2 months away from new compulsory rules requiring self-employed taxpayers to file tax information 4 times a year and buy expensive software in order to do so. What's your position on that? Will Reform pledge to reverse those rules? And if I may, you've taken an interest in the housing market. Are you considering pledging to abolish stamp duty?
Well, on both of those, look, we're going to think carefully about these things. We're not going to make up policy on the hoof, so you'll hear more from us on those topics, like stamp duty. But, what I've been very clear on today is that it's not just about tax cuts. We're certainly not going to do tax cuts that aren't fully costed and funded. We've got to find the headroom first. But we're also going to do the hard yards of supply-side reforms. And that means change to our planning system, and in particular, in those places, like inner East London, where there's immense potential to get building again with a zonal, more liberal planning system. So you'll certainly be hearing good stuff on that in the months ahead. I've got Athena from The Independent.
Hello. You've hit out at decades of mismanagement of the economy under the Tories. Given you were a part of that government, what specific decisions from that period do you now believe were mistakes? And why should voters trust your criticism of the system when you were a senior part of it?
Well, look, I don't think anybody has been more honest and reflective about the failures of the last Conservative government who was a part of it than me. I've been consistent in voicing the concerns about what that government got wrong. I urged the party to learn from its lessons and to be different. Ultimately, I concluded that it can't change, won't change, shouldn't be given the keys back to run this country, because that would be like giving the arsonists back control after they've just burnt the house down. There are a number of big mistakes. We set out some of them today. The fact that welfare has ballooned, costing us billions, potentially bankrupting the country. The fact that serious planning reforms were ditched so that we didn't get young people onto the housing ladder. And the fact that under the Conservatives, particularly under Theresa May and then Boris, an absolutely disastrous energy policy was pursued that has deindustrialized our country and impoverished working people. Before you even get on to immigration, those things should be sufficient to say that this party cannot be trusted for many years to come. Now, I've got 4 more, so I need to get through these. 3 more, sorry, apologies, so I need to get through these quite fast. I've got Anna from the Financial Times. Anna.
Thanks for asking me a question. Richard Tice has warned companies that if Reform wins power, it would strike down contracts that companies have already signed to provide the government with clean power. Do you agree with that policy, and will you proceed with that policy, or do you have concerns that it would create market instability and potentially reduce investment in Britain?
Look, it's very clear that one of the most important and radical reforms that a reform government would enact is a different energy policy for this country. We cannot allow the further deindustrialization of this country. We can't allow a situation where energy bills, industrial energy bills, are 5 or 6 times higher here than in the United States. So we have to change course. And if Ed Miliband thinks that he's going to spend the next year, 2 years, 3 years, however long it is, between now and the next general election, setting a booby trap for this country by choosing its energy mix for the next 20 years, then we do need to put him and some investors on notice that we're not going to allow that to happen. We're not going to allow our energy policy for the next generation to be determined now by a net zero zealot who doesn't seem to care about the competitiveness of our economy. So we'll give this careful thought, absolutely, but investors should take heed that we're serious when we say we're going to make this country competitive again, and we're going to bring back energy abundance again. I've got Alexandra from The Guardian.
Hello, you said today that the public is right to be wary of false prophets promising stability. Your party dropped plans for £90 billion worth of tax cuts 18 months after promising them. Nigel Farage has said he doesn't like banks. He was giving serious thought to scrapping the OBR and suggested he'd like to replace the Bank of England governor. In light of this, why should business leaders, financial markets and the City of London feel reassured today?
Well, look, I hope you've heard today the message that I've delivered. It's one where every policy that we announce is going to be fully costed, that we're going to find savings before we approach tax cuts, that we're going to crush the benefits bill to ensure that we actually get people back into the workplace, and that we're going to bring forward serious supply-side reforms. And I would question who you're comparing reform against. What, Liz Truss and the Conservative Party? That is an era of stability? Or Rachel Reeves and this Labour government? That is stability? Come on. What we're going to offer is the combination that this country is actually crying out for, which is seriousness of purpose, stability, but actually some radical policies to turn this country around. And if we get that balance right, then I think the next government under reform will be one of the most important for driving this economy forward for a very long time. And then lastly, but not least, we have Sophie from the Daily Mirror.
Sophie Huskerson from the Daily Mirror. So if you restore the two-child benefit limit, are you comfortable with plunging hundreds of thousands of kids into poverty? And what is your plan to tackle the 4.5 million children in poverty?
Well, it's not about that. Of course we care about ensuring that people can have kids and those kids can lead fulfilling lives. We can't just do that by spending more and more on benefits. The country is going to go bankrupt. That is the course we're currently on. So someone has to instill some realism into this debate. And that is what we're going to do. We're going to get the benefits bill down. We're going to do so fairly, with concern for the genuinely vulnerable. But we are going to get it down, because there's no alternative. And we're going to find other ways in which we can support families and working people, like building some more homes, for example, like getting some good jobs going again, like bringing down people's bills with a different energy policy. This is going to be our approach, but if you think that we can just keep going on like Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves is, weekly, increasing the benefits bill, then you're on a course to bankruptcy, and Reform are not going to allow that to happen. Very good. Well, thank you all very much indeed for coming today, and thanks for your patience with all these questions. Very good to see you all.